Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 5 Minute Library, where Ira and Piyushi and we explore books that read you. Today, we're back with our Author's Own series, and we have a very special guest on today, Mr. Ramaswamy Giridharan, with his book, Right Under Your Nose. Now, for every single person out there who loves any kind of Bollywood drama, and especially if you watch Suryavanshi lately, you will really like this book. Hello, and thank you for being on our show today.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, perfect. So, just to give a little bit of introduction, Mr. Ramaswamy Giridharan is the general manager of the fraud cell in the Department of Banking Supervision in the Reserve Bank of India, the Central Bank of India. So, it's a great deal for us to have him on the show here today. So, I'm just going to start outrightly with the first question that everyone has when they when they hear your bio. With a career in finance, why did you decide to write a book?
If you look at the remaining part of my bio, I am also a behavioral trainer and an international sports commentator. So somewhere I'm interested as much in people as maybe in finance. So books are always about people. And especially murder mysteries are about people, their motives, their intelligences, the way they behave. So that's the reason. That's another part of me which I wanted to explore.
That's great. What better way to explore it than through a book? So, what part of your behavioral science studies or training comes into the book? Like, is that why you chose to write a murder mystery thriller novel?
Yes, because you see, the every murder has a motive, and every murder acts because he or she thinks in a particular manner. So a good behavioralist can always trace why a person has behaved in this particular manner and what can be that person's next step. So, and that is what you require as a detective. So that's the thing that I got out in this book.
I think that's great how you used behavioral training and corporate training to write a murder mystery. That's a very great link. It's not something that you would think of often. So, while you use this process, what was your writing process like?
My writing process was like this. I would ask questions to myself that what would be the most difficult way to do something. So then one thing stuck me. Two people drink from the same glass at the same time in front of 100 people. One dies, the other doesn't. So how can a murder happen right in front of 100 people? And no one can guess how it happened. So I began the research on that. And the other thing was the field research which I did. I met a number of forensic experts. I went to morgues and saw many dead bodies. I looked at a dead body and I told the forensic expert that, well, this dead body looks different from the other dead bodies. Why? And he told me a reason that this is the disease that this person suffered from before dying. And some of the characteristics of the disease that gave me a clue on how to make another. I spent time with a snake charmer. I learned about how a snake charmer trains snakes, how he milks the venom, how the venom acts. So all that went into the book.
This writing process sounds more like a book. A book should be written about the writing process itself. It sounds very interesting. Since there was such a big range of experiences, what was your most challenging part of writing this book?
The time gap, because if you're just researching from the internet or from a library, it is very easy for you to have continuity. Here, I could not get a forensic expert to talk to me when I wanted. And then you visit a morgue, it's not necessary that you will see a dead body, which is interesting. And the snake charmer was unwilling to allow me to see because he thought I'm one of those environmentalists who will then stop him from plying his trade, or I was a policeman. He had all sorts of ideas. It was very difficult to convince him to show me how they train snakes and how they milk the venom and what happens with the snake venom. So I found this a very difficult process because I needed inputs from elsewhere. And that was not going to come to me as and when I wanted. I had to get after get that input, and then get back into writing because after a lull, that was the challenge.
Okay, well, that sounds like a very exhaustive process that you followed for the book. And like Hira said, I mean, I think you should definitely consider, I'm sure our listeners too would like to know more about how you spoke to the snake charmer and how you went into the morgue and spoke to all of the different forensic scientists. I think that would be a great story out there. But from the book that you've written, who is your favorite character personally?
In my book, probably I would say you would be very surprised, but not the lead male protagonist or the female protagonist, but the support cast of Madhukar Delvi. Because such people are very rare. He was completely loyal. He was efficient. He never looked for any gain for himself. He put his career online when it was required, and he contributed a great deal behind the scenes. He had suffered a personal tragedy, and if you see the ending of the book, also ends with him adopting a child. So, which was also a gesture which he does. So, to my mind, he was probably the standout character.
This is great
Yeah.
that, it's so unusual that the male protagonist is not the one that you like the most, but,
Yeah.
you're so invested with.
Yeah, I truly thought it would be Vijay, the lead male character, but because he gave me a lot of different ideas about how to maintain a single train of thought, how do you connect one dot to another. So while reading, that's what I related to the most. But I think for everyone else, it's so subjective because you always like the characters that you feel most related to. So I think it's great that you have such a range of diverse characters within the book. Okay, so for our last
The,
segment.
yeah, and yeah, tell me.
Go
Yeah.
ahead,
Go
please.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the other thing I wanted to tell was that this is one of probably the only book where you will have a male and a female detective, both equally good. No, it's not like generally one male being very much good and the lady character just filling in for glamour, for beauty. Nothing of that sort. She's as good a detective as Padmini is as good as Vijay is. Padmini has different strengths as a detective and as a person. So they are equal in this sense. So you don't have that. You have a Sherlock Holmes and a Watson just admiring Sherlock Holmes, or Pyro leagues ahead and the other looking at him. Not the case here. Both of them equally good, male and a female. So I like that part of my book and my endeavor in that.
As they absolutely
Definitely.
should be.
Definitely. It shows a lot of diversity.
Yes. So,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah. So,
Yes, Ira, go ahead.
you've spoken so much about your writing process, the research, the complexity of each character. What advice would you give to aspiring young writers?
I would say two things. First of all, have confidence in yourself. Don't get put off by somebody else telling you that this story, I didn't feel like reading it even for 5 minutes. Don't get put off by that. Because the end, somebody else may not like it, or maybe a little bit of editing can make the story wonderful from maybe a non-read. Just like this, put a bit of spice, a bit of salt, and what was non-edible or inedible some time back would become a very tasty dish. Or supposing if you have put too much of salt, it might be inedible, but it doesn't mean that the dish per se was not cooked well. All you did was to put a little more salt. So let the editor fine tune it. The second advice that I will give is, while have confidence in your work, don't be over possessed with it. When somebody tells you that bring this change, don't get so possessive and say, no, 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 this is mine, this is how it should be. Because after all, while the work is ours, it belongs to the reader in a different way. We want the readers also to like it. So don't get possessive would be the second. The third, which I would say, is that you do not copy the great authors. Have your own style. That will allow you to flow naturally than trying to be someone else.
I think those are some great pieces of advice.
Yeah, I think really realistic,
Mm.
addressing a lot of doubts that people would have in the writing process. So we've come to a little bit of a close where we've asked you everything we wanted to ask you, but wanted to check with you. Are there any closing notes, anything you want to call out about your book, or any message for your readers?
Yes, two messages. One is that I have, we all complain that this is a world about big bucks and high tech. My favorite quote is, imagination can any day trump big bucks and high tech. If you read my book, there's hardly any high tech involved. There isn't much money involved. Vijay, Padmini, and Dalvi, they managed to crack the case mainly through imagination, if you look at it. So that's the biggest asset that you can have. Yeah, so therefore, own imagination. You may be surprised that Einstein spent more time imagining himself traveling on a light beam and not in the laboratory to discover the theory of relativity for which he is so much known. That's the first message. The second message is the title of the book, Right Under Your Nose. The answers to most things in the world lie right under your nose, but that's a part of your body which you can't see. I can't see my motion. I can see you, I can see to a great distance, but I can't see my own motion. So you can't see what lies right under your nose. But the answers all lie there. That's the way the world is. So that's the second message that I wanted to give out with the book.
I think that's very insightful and very wholesome as well. Thank you for giving us those pieces of advice and for all of our readers as well. And thank you for being here today on our show. We really appreciate it. So, everyone listening, make sure if you like a really nice Indian murder mystery thriller novel with a bit of police action, but also detective work and forensic science, make sure you check out this book.
The review for this book will be up on YouTube. It'll be right under your nose, as you said. So thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you very much, Piyushi. Thank you very much, Ida. And I think you should have added that there's a bit of romance also in the book, isn't it?
There is definitely between the two protagonists, there is some romance, but we don't want to give out more details. So it's more of a slow burn kind of a romance. It's not something where it just goes from 0 to 100. It's something that develops as the story develops, which is the best part about it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And for all our listeners, we'll see you in 5.